Book him, Dano.
Howdy, howdy. Happy Friday, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. I am so excited that you're back, Margie. I had such a great time with you, and so I'm really excited. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me back. Yeah, this has been fun, actually.
Well, don't let it go to your head. I make 23 cents per episode. But I've had so many Karens, so many incels over the last week go absolutely crazy over our Tyler Robinson show, which got like the most views. I think people really do want to kind of demystify the whole investigative experience. So I guess I'll start. I'm Molly Brenner, aka Molly Sleuth. I was a detective for the Los Angeles Police Department for over a decade. I taught interview and interrogation tactics, lie detection, body language. I worked major assault crimes when I left there. I worked for another agency and was sworn here in Michigan. Hated them. And now I'm still a first responder, but I'm not in law enforcement anymore. I have a 7-page CV if you need me to email it to you, because I did a lot of shit. I've written a lot of warrants and 314s, and I've taken a lot of cases through the prelim process, arrest, trial, everything. So I think we're just going to kind of demystify it a little bit. And so I was so excited to meet you on the interwebs, my new friend, because tell us who you are.
Yeah, so my name's Margie. I've been a police officer for 17 years. I've worked in a couple different departments, so I've gotten to experience working in urban settings. I've worked in a university setting, so I have that college town plus regular town policing style, and currently I work in a suburb of Metro Detroit. So 17 years total.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, and but I will say, of that 17 years, I have just been a road dog is all I've been. Not a detective, anything fancy like that, just a good old grunt.
Yeah, but 17 years is like dog years because you went through this whole transformation with the whole, 2020 hell and the sir, stop stabbing me, please kind of stuff as law enforcement really changed to this kinder, gentler community policing sort of a thing. And I think we came on about the same time. I started in 2008. And when you could still be really proactive and stop people,
Yeah.
and observation arrests were kind of everything. Now they're kind of going away from that, at least in terms of like LAPD is really like a lot of those stops that used to get you dope, guns, and money. Like you can't do anymore, at least in California. They don't want you stopping people for the broken taillights and stuff, but that was like the bread and butter of the gang unit that I was in, was like ticky-tacky stuff, get you guns. So God help them. But we're going to be talking a lot about crime tonight. We're going to be talking about cases, not just our cases, and radio calls, but some famous cases, because we want to talk a little bit about, there's a lot of mommy sleuths out there, and I love it. I love anybody that's asking a lot of objective questions, and get you thinking. Of course, you can go by the 911 caller who says, it was a 7-foot tall purple man and he ran that away. But going to calls that sometimes it's not what's reported, and the fear of the incident changes people and stuff. So
yeah, a lot of times I will get where a call will come in and what is reported to dispatch, and we get on scene and it's completely just not even the same. So I don't actually even take much credit or weight on what the original call is. You get there and you just figure it out for yourself.
Right. It's like you're getting on the radio going, can we confirm that we're here for a 7-foot tall purple guy? Because I have a 4-foot tall yellow guy running, and I just want to make sure before I tase him. Could you do a call back? So facts can be nebulous, although there's only one thing that actually happened. The way that you can paint it through facts, there's a famous book called How to Lie with Statistics. And the court process is a little bit like that. I'm going to tell you a little bit of cases of like how you can weight the case better or worse, and what causes cases to get filed or not, or go to prelim or not, or get them to plead to a lesser charge or not. We'll talk about a few cases that I handled. I won't go through any of these search warrants or anything. There's a lot of private information, shall we say. And I'm not here to put anyone on blast. You know, people make mistakes, they go to jail, they do some things, and although it may be publicly accessible information, I feel like we're here to sort of learn from their stories and maybe not from their namesake in particular. So I might be changing names or whatnot, and I hope that you feel free to do the same. We're just talking about some generalized information. I do have to get Pilled open though. And so I want to talk a little bit about, and I might freeze, so hold on, wait a minute. And let me mute this tab so that wait, did I? You know what? It's really hard to be Amish. Can I just say? I'm not acting like I'm trying to get them to adopt me. It's not going so well. And I see me, but I see the chat that I need to pop out. And that is what I require, just the chat. So hi, everybody on Pilled, Rumble, and YouTube. We've got a lot of good emotes in the Pilled and in Rumble, so feel free to abuse them to your heart's content. All right, there we go, much better. And YouTube, yes, and YouTube. And so, okay, well, I'm just not really sure where to start. Like, going to trial, the vast majority of cases don't go to trial. And I think one of the things that caused me, I grew up, I was a piece of shit punk rocker. So it's not like I grew up going, I sure love the police. But so I've always had a little bit of like a fairness thing, for one. And then also just feeling like, you know, there aren't black hats and white hats. Good people make mistakes, bad people, you know, walk grandma across the street, and all that's great stuff. But there are some really bad people in the world that we need to safeguard away from society, or safeguard society away from them. And so what I found in my time in law enforcement is like, there's what they do, there's what is reported, there's what I can take a report on, there's what will actually fly as a charge, what actually gets charged, what actually makes it through prelim, what gets pled to, what gets convicted, and then what time they actually serve. And so this monster, now I'm not saying we should go back to like dragging people in the town square and like hanging them, but like crime is all over the place. And so hopefully some of these cases that we talk about tonight are going to be a little bit eye-opening for you. And maybe that's where I start. So because I looked this up today. He was just sentenced this month. And so I was just looking at this freaking case. And of course I can't find it. So I think it was 2 years ago, I went to Chicago. Don't go there. If anybody's there, come move to Michigan. It's just a hellhole now. We got chased. There were all kinds of people. I went with my friend, and she wasn't a cop. And so I'm like, okay, when you pack your luggage, because we took the train and then we had to walk to the hotel, I'm like, do not look like a tourist. Like, you understand what that means.
Yeah.
Like, you are rife for crime. You're rife for being a target when you look like a tourist. Don't look. I brought a shitty duffel bag that looked like it came from the gym. I wasn't wearing anything fancy, no fucking jewelry, shoes I could run in. Like, that is what you got to wear when you go to these places. And she shows up with a hot pink rolling bag. And I'm like, oh my God, as we down the street, and I'm like, everybody can hear us like a block away. And so there was only one time where I was actually like scared for us, and we were walking back to Union Station. We stayed like right off the Miracle Mile, Miracle Mile. And there were two people that were looking at us, and they looked at each other and they went, yeah, yeah. And then they walked to a group of other people and they all looked at us, and I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. Like, because it was we were walking through a park, and like there was a bunch of hypes and everybody was just all fucked up, and I just knew we were going to get robbed. That was it. And so I grew up maybe not in the greatest neighborhood. Well, actually, my parents lived in a very nice neighborhood, and then my mom says every time I moved closer and closer to Skid Row in Los Angeles. But I guess I was kind of always street smart, like even before I was a cop. And so I just looked kind of like over their shoulder and was like, hey. And then they thought we were meeting someone. So they all were, what? And turned around. Nobody was there. And I just turned to her and I was like, run. And I don't think she understood why I was saying run. She didn't see the people. Fine. But I mean, that time that we were there was like drops of blood all over the sidewalk. There was a Homeland Security car with a decoy with a mannequin, like an obvious mannequin in the passenger seat with a baseball cap on. Like, what the fuck is going on here? And like people were getting stabbed. Somebody was like got stabbed inside some store. This is on Miracle Mile, like the nice place. So we're going to see this band, Skinny Puppy, at the House of Blues. And they played 3 nights. We went to the first night. They added a couple nights. And when we went to leave the House of Blues, and House of Blues is like a big kind of corporation. Like they've got like official bouncers. It's like on a nice little like hill with a big old driveway. And as we were leaving the venue, there was a group, and we had seen several of these groups as we had walked around. We were only there like a day and a half, of people that were doing like fake charities, or give me money for my rap album, or give me money for my basketball team. But and I don't know, I was only sworn in Michigan for like an hour and a half, so you'll have to tell me. But in California, we called it an Estes robbery being the taking of property by force or by fear. And so these guys would block your path and demand a donation. But like if you're demanding money, it's a robbery. Like you can't demand that I voluntarily give you money. I'm not voluntarily giving you money. I need to get down the sidewalk and you're blocking me. So so those could get, in certain cases, although not often, those could get charged as a robbery in LA. And these guys were very much like, this was an Estes robbery. They kept trying to get money. They would block your path. They had these stupid laminated sheets that they were like throwing in your face and going like, I know you have money. I know you have money. Open your wallet. Like, fuck, bro. Like, nobody has money. Get out of my face. Like, we just got robbed 2 blocks ago. Like, you know, just using like all the tactics, whatever. But as we're leaving the House of Blues after the Skinny Puppy show, there was a group of them at the front door that the security guards for House of Blues were allowing to prevent people from leaving the venue until they paid the toll. And so we waited for a group of people to be all walking out of the House of Blues together. And then I grabbed her and I was like, run. And then we just like got out of the driveway, and then we were safe because they were all huddled at the thing. But so, okay, the next night, this is in 2023. The next night, Skinny Puppy's playing House of Blues, and this guy, Andrew, who's 47 years old, is leaving, and some shitbag, Jamie Miller, 29 years old, does this Estes robbery. Give me some fucking money. I am collecting for I think he said like a violence prevention charity or something. And so right. So this Andrew guy was like, bro, I'm not giving you any money. So Jamie punches him out, and he hits the ground and he hits his head. And that is the last that he was ever conscious in his life. He had severe brain damage and he died. So he pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter, which to me is also just like, you sit in line, you ride the ride. You decided to rob a guy, and in the commission of this robbery, he died. But what they're saying is, well, I mean, if you punch a totally reasonably healthy person, like, who would know that he was going to die? I wouldn't know he was going to die. And so they allowed him to plead guilty to a lesser charge. I guess I should explain. The district attorney, at least in terms of the city of Los Angeles, let's just say everything I say is based off my training and experience. They are graded on their conviction rate. In other words, if I go and punch you in the face and snatch your purse and run down the street, they could arrest me for robbery, obviously battery, maybe, assault with a deadly weapon if I had a roll of quarters in my fist. But then if I plead guilty to grand theft person, which is the crime of you asleep on the park bench with $1 hanging out of your pocket, and I just slip that dollar right out of your pocket and I take off, and you don't even know about it until you wake up. That is the same crime, brand theft person. It's technically a felony crime. It's nonviolent, ineligible for probation, all this shit. But the district attorney gets credit for a felony conviction, and then they never have to go through the trial process because all these DAs are packed full of fucking cases because the city is going to shit. And especially if I'm the kind of person that'll punch you out and snatch your purse and take off and use your credit cards all over town, and I only have to do 17 days in custody on a nonviolent crime of like essentially pickpocketing, then what does it do to me as the criminal? So at any rate, this guy, he pleads to involuntary manslaughter. Now, this process, they said it's not fair for him to remain in custody while the court process goes out. So he gets sent home, 29-year-old, free, happy, healthy, ready to party, go and live his life on an ankle monitor. And as this plays out over 2.5 years, they give him credit for 912 days. They give him a 5-year sentence, but they give him credit for 2.5 years.
Now, he was out of custody that whole time?
He was out of custody. Now, in Illinois, you only serve half of your sentence. So he took a plea. He takes this 5 years, which the family was okay with. And they typically will ask the family, is this okay? And you'd like to think that the family was like, yes, it's fine. He's learned his lesson. This guy was a piece of shit. He had a long history of robbing people, using these fake charities, and for all kinds of different things that he would do. And that's like a big thing in Chicago right now, are these fake charities and these like Estes robberies. And so the family isn't just benevolently saying, that's fine, he can have 5 years. That's enough. We forgive. But they're like, fuck you. I have a job to get to. I run a dry cleaner. I, need to go back to school. I can't be in court for this hearing and that hearing for you guys to plead this and say that and all of this stuff. Like, I need to go back to my life. And like at some point, not only have you killed my loved one, but now you're taking away my life and my ability to pay my bills. And hey, Pammy over on YouTube. And so at any rate, the family says there was I'm in a Skinny Puppy group. I love the band. And this one of the girls that was a witness, she said, we were really upset that the family said okay to this. But a witness is only called when they're going to testify, and they're not called for the duration of the trial. At any rate, judge sentences him 5 years. Judge gives him credit for 2.5 years. And 2.5 years with 912 days credit, 912.5 days. He had to serve half a day.
Wow.
And so for what? For a totally greedy piece of shit who will punch you out and then be like, wasn't my fault. He was healthy. I don't know what happened. Like, and so this is the kind of shit that I'm talking about when the court system isn't ever going to make you whole. Somebody breaks your window and they're never going to pay for the window and all the time that you had to take off work to come testify. And the fact that you now had to go get new identification because your shit is out there. And the fact that you're scared to park on that street again anymore. Like, you're never made whole by the court process. And so for me, it was really frustrating. But I feel like as a detective, I felt a lot more in control of being able to shape the victim's experience and give them the most amount of closure that that anybody could, to get their stuff back, to try to get good charges. And I think that's part of why the whole prelim for the Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson thing peeved me off, because I just felt like it was so soft. Have you gone to many prelims and testified in court on the cases that you've taken reports on?
Yeah, I mean, I've done my fair share of preliminaries. I've actually done more well, that's not surprising, but I've done way more preliminaries than I've actually gone to court for a full trial on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the prelim, that's the sweetest spot. And for me as a detective, my job was to just slam dunk that shit at the prelim so that you as the defendant are just like, dude, we better not fight this. What kind of deal can I take? And they would give you, the district attorney is going to give you the best deal possible at the prelim. And that's when you see all the evidence against you. Hey, I got some video, I got these 3 witnesses, I got, cell phone data, I've got DNA, fingerprints, this, that, the other, ballistics, blah, 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 blah. And your defense attorney, if they're worth their salt, is going to say, we should probably plead guilty to grand theft person. Yeah. Because you're not going to win this one. And if we take this to a jury trial, people are going to think you're an asshole. We can't hide it. They have all the evidence in the world that you did it, for you to stand there and say not guilty. I don't know. Maybe that's the first question I want to ask you, Margie. Do you feel like, given the nature that law enforcement has kind of like gotten away from us, where we're just sort of like gentle babysitters that put you in a kind little system for your 3 hots and a cot, do you think that there will ever be a time where people will want you to get, not you, but a criminal that pleads not guilty, but then is found very fucking guilty, extra time, because now you have wasted the court's time, private citizens get yanked in on jury duty, etc. Do you think there'll ever be a time that will be an additional, like, part of the sentencing phase?
Truthfully, no. I don't see that ever happening. I would love to say that would happen, just because the amount of times that, people are, nobody claims that you very, very rarely get somebody, at least like from the basic street level interaction, very few and far between do you get somebody that actually admits guilt to everything on scene. It's actually, we type up our basic report and then it gets pushed onto the detectives, and it's their job, and they have all that extra special training that they go to try to get that admission of guilt. But it's pretty, you don't find a lot of people that are willing to admit to guilt on everything.
Yeah.
You get some truths, but I would love to say that, because of the amount of time that gets put into these court cases and trials, but truthfully, I don't ever see that happening. I don't know.
Yeah,
it'd be a whole different world. That'd be sure. I mean, I know you're a little removed from the road patrol aspect, but I'm sure that with what you do you ever have to run to your local police departments for the incarceratus runs? I mean, we have prisoners that, they are short of breath. They,
yeah,
list anything that they have, and they're going to the hospital, and they know that that's a game they play, and it gets them out of their cell for a couple hours. And I mean, I'll tell you, if we have 10 people in custody, 9 of the 10 are going to the hospital at some point during their stay. It's a new game they know how to play.
We had a whole period of time in LA. I don't know if there was like a pamphlet that went around town, but they were all shitting themselves when they would go to jail. And it's like, okay, so you smell. Like, I mean, I'm just gonna roll down my window and drive you to jail. Like, that's on you.
Yeah. Do you think that gets you out of it? No.
Yeah, you're like, that's it, bro. I guess you're not gonna have underwear. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It was like a whole string of them all together. It was very odd. And then with the like heart palpitations and stuff, and like I'm going to talk about her tonight, but I had a felon who would fake seizures. She sued me civilly. We'll talk about her. Maybe we'll talk about her now. This is all allegedly, and I'm making this up for entertainment purposes only. But I still have PTSD about this fucking arrest. The first time I arrested her, I was working the gang unit, and we were just going to serve the search warrant. We were just there as a tactical team to go in and make everything safe for the detectives to come in, put handcuffs on people, collect evidence, and be on our way. And first of all, we go to this house in a very ritzy area, and there are these like hand-carved ancient Tibetan wood doors on this house. And, you know, we're cops. We're like, boom, 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 search warrant, open up, right? And nobody's opening up. You can see like people running around inside the house. You're just like, all right, you know, they could be arming themselves, blah, blah, blah. So you can't allow that shit to happen. And so I'm just like, just open the door. Don't make us break this door down. And nope, we had to break the door, which was heartbreaking. And for what? She was a serial residential burglar. They had a lot of money. They made money doing civil lawsuits for bullshit. Like your paper towel dispenser is 4 inches too high for ADA compliance, but like you're not even in a wheelchair, like, and you're not even a customer at my store. But this is like a whole thing that goes on in California. It's the most litigious state. You could sue anyone for anything. You don't have to be a customer of the business, and they just shake people down. All right, fine. We won't go to court on this. You won't have to get an attorney for $250,000, but you have to give me $25,000 to go away. Okay, fine. Here, I guess. And so they just do this. And there are these like civil attorneys that will just do this constantly. So that's how they made their money.
So is that how people are getting rich now? I need to get into that.
Dude, you have no idea, Margie. It's so out of control.
Here I was trying to start podcasting.
Right. Yeah. I'll do a screenshot for you. You'll see. I just went from 22 cents to 23 cents. It reminds me of an old damned Peel Session tape I used to have, where he said, "Thank you very much for buying our last LP so we can earn 12 pounds a week instead of 11. So at any rate, we go, and she's got all this stolen jewelry that they're shoving up in the thing. Oh, she runs to the second floor with her boobs out because she thinks that like that'll distract everyone and then nobody will arrest her. Like I don't know what these people think. They have impulse control problems and like they're not really thinking. But so at any rate, long story short, she faked seizures for 17 and a half hours it took to find a jail facility that would book her. Now, there's a whole backstory, but her sister went to jail for murder, fake seizures in custody. They gave her too much of the medication for real seizures. She overdosed, and the family got all this money. And so now the sister is faking seizures and whatnot. So at any rate, I get this call, and I guess this is where we'll start getting into DNA. I'm working the residential burglary table, and I get a report. She had a very distinctive appearance, and I'll leave it at that. And my report says, suspect further described as someone with a very distinctive appearance. So I'm like, for shit's sake, we just arrested her. So I make a 6-pack photo lineup. Now, I don't know, do you guys serve 6-packs to victims?
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally. I've been there for a couple of them, but yeah, we do that. Our detectives.
Some 6-packs are harder than others. I had a gangster who had his entire face tattooed, and he was an albino. It's really hard to find 5 other gangsters that are albino with full facial tattoos. But the whole point of the 6-pack is to find 5 people that look like your suspect to make it fair. And you put your suspect in different places, and you don't want the picture of them wearing like the red shirt and everybody else is in black and white. And so you really want it to be fair, because at every point, I feel like as a detective, I'm working for the defense attorney. I'm trying to take away every little thing that they're going to be like, this is totally not fair. My client is, not guilty based off of the 6-pack photo lineup. They were the only person that was circled already when the paper went down. And so doing her 6-pack was rough because her booking photos were very unusual. And so I had to find 5 very unusual booking photos. You can't have just some total methed out like photo and then 5 like Taylor Swift looking girls. So it was a tricky 6-pack to make, but I always make it with the defense attorney in mind. Now I go to this victim's house, and essentially this scumbag had crawled into her window. The window was open, just screen on it. My victim, beautiful lady, so nice, is handicapped. She has a pretty bad disease, and her hot and cold temperature regulation is a little bit skewed, and she needed fresh air. And you should be able to open your freaking window without some asshole climbing in there. And so she's in another part of her little apartment. She has a very modest apartment, and she hears something in her bedroom, and she goes and she opens the bedroom door, and it's like, is there somebody in here? I would have run out the apartment door or shot through the door, because that's who I am as a person. But, she opens the door. Is there somebody in here? Now, my shit bag gets from behind the door with a high heel shoe with the heel facing my victim. And she says, give me something of value. Give me your money. And the girl was like, you're in a shithole apartment. Like, I'm disabled. I don't work. I don't have any money. Like, what is this money that you speak of? And well, give me something. Don't you have any jewelry? Like, no, I fucking don't. Like, just leave. Like, please, just like, you can have whatever you want. Just get out. And like, they end up walking through the apartment together, basically shopping through this woman's apartment, looking at different things. She takes a watch that was $15 new. And that's basically all she took. She thought she took some earrings. She found those later. And so she's walking her through. And now my suspect is just like diary of the mouth, telling her about her boyfriend and her life and all this, that, and the other. Well, that all becomes circumstantial evidence then, because her boyfriend is blah, blah, blah. So all of this stuff is coming on as circumstantial evidence to support the fact that this known burglar in this same area, who matches this unique description, who also has all the things that my suspect told my victim in this case. So I go over to the lady's house, my 6-pack photo lineup, and I give her the admonition. In a moment, I'm going to show you a group of photographs. This group may or may not contain a picture of the person now who committed the crime, whatever. Be advised that hairstyles, beards, mustaches can be changed, and, blah, blah, blah. So they sign the admonition. I put the paper down. The paper isn't even on the woman's dining room table. It is still coming down to the table. And her finger is on the suspect and goes, how did you know? And I'm like, well, I can't really tell you about that, because you don't want to skew the case. And this sucks. But I mean, going to like rape trials, you're not allowed to tell the jury, this is his 39th fucking rape. This is what this guy does. This is his MO. And I can't tell this poor woman, like, we all know who this fucking lady is. She can't stop breaking into houses. So fighting the district attorney for this. Now, she did leave a lighter at the scene, and I recovered it for DNA testing. The testing came back. It was a mixture. There was female DNA on it. But the district attorney said that essentially a lighter is an item that is commonly shared. And just because my suspect's DNA is on the lighter doesn't mean my suspect was in the apartment. They said, we don't want to file this case. This is a violent felony in the state of California. Hot prowl burglary is when somebody is home and you break in. It's a violent felony. We don't want to file it based off of just witness identification alone. I said, yeah, but she didn't see a shadowy figure running through the alley. They talked to each other face to face for minutes. She was telling her all kinds of stuff about her life. Like, she pointed at it, like, before it was even on the table. Like, she wasn't, sometimes the 6-pack is like, kind of looks like him, but like he had a little bit more scruff, and like that looks a lot like him. But my suspect had a green shirt. Well, fucking, could you just like picture him with a green shirt then? Like, like sometimes it just can be like, help me out. She was positive. Now, I checked the pawn database. This $15 watch never made its way anywhere. I think she was arrested that night or the night after, downtown LA, prostituting. So needless to say, if she could trade a $15 watch for anything, she would have. And so we served another warrant. That was a whole other shit show. She had a very sad life, a lot of money, and the worst life you could imagine. And essentially, we go to the preliminary hearing on this case. Now, my victim is absolutely terrified to see the suspect in court. I want to be in a safe area. I don't want to be anywhere near her. Is she going to be able to see me? I don't want her to be able to come back. Is she going to know my name? And a lot of that really sucks because you're not going to get a confidentiality on that kind of stuff. And as we go to court, I did not tell her shit that the suspect would be there or anything. She hasn't seen her since the date of this. She saw her in a more, let's say, casual appearance than a court appearance. So my suspect comes in all dolled up, and now she's got like a cast or a sling or something on her arm, which would really make anyone going to court feel like perhaps she's a victim of another crime coming to court, because we're all just like in the Gen Pop area. And she doesn't get through the door before my victim just freezes in her chair and goes, "That's her." And I'm like, shit, she like really knows that this is her.
Yeah.
Now she, I believe they didn't file. I think this didn't go past. It went past the prelim, but she was going to plead to something else. I'm not too clear on that because that was kind of as I was leaving. I got promoted and I moved to another part of Los Angeles. But after that, my suspect sued me for a civil rights violation because I shouldn't arrest her more than once because that looks biased. Like, this is her claim. Now, in the city of Los Angeles, listen up, everybody. If you sue for like $35,000 or less, and it could be more now, they just pay it because it costs them too much money to have attorneys to fight this shit. You want to sue the city of Los Angeles because a cop car drove by you and they looked at you and it made you feel away. Like, they just settle for these cases. So she sued me and the department. There was a whole settlement, and they said, come pick up your check. And she never came and picked up the check. And then it was like the time had elapsed. Like, this is how like screwed this girl is.
Weird. She probably was already in jail.
I don't know. I truly don't care. What a horrible, pickled human being. But I do still think about that poor victim because I bet you she's just sweating like crazy in her apartment for the rest of her life, terrified that somebody's going to crawl through her window again. But at any rate, so I guess now here comes the DNA that we want to talk about, because this lighter did have a mixture of DNA on it, but DNA isn't everything. First of all, DNA can't tell you when that DNA was deposited. I mean, unless you have a fresh blood stain or still a liquid form of sperm, you're not really getting a timeline. Now, it does degrade, but it's like in the Tyler Robinson case, from what I understand, he's a majority contributor to the DNA on the screwdriver found on the roof, but it's degraded. And degrading can happen for a number of reasons, but essentially it can get rained on, it can sit out in the UV for a really long time, high heat, running water, cleaning the item, having somebody else touch it. These are things that can degrade DNA over time. So because he's the major contributor, but it's degraded, could mean that that was a screwdriver that was his that he hadn't touched for a while. Now, there's a minor but more complete DNA of Lance Twiggs, his boyfriend, on it, which is very interesting. And so it could be like, if it's my hairbrush, this is going to have my DNA. My hands have been all over the handle. I've probably cleaned it out. My hair's in it. But if you grabbed it once and hit somebody over the head with it, you're going to have a minor. Mine's going to be all over it. but it could be degraded because maybe I haven't used this brush in a while. So I'll be very interested to see what the DNA evidence is in this Tyler Robinson case. We're not going to go too deep in the weeds with Tyler Robinson. I felt like we did last week.
That was a really good way to describe that too, that degradation. That was a good way to describe that with the hairbrush.
Yeah, I mean, there are items that you have. Listen, if you are standing in place and just speaking for 30 seconds, your DNA goes out past 3 yards in all directions of your face. DNA is everywhere. And there's a whatchamacallit, a rule to it, where you touch something, part of it is on you and part of you is on it. It's the whole who put their chocolate in my peanut butter kind of a thing. And I have a couple of cases it's called Locard's Exchange. I wrote it down earlier because I wanted to talk about the Danielle Van Dam case, which I'm sure you didn't hear about because it's a California case, but it was fucking fascinating in terms of the detective work that they did to solve this shitbag case. But with DNA, it's not a super exact science. And so I want to go through a couple of cases of that. And maybe I will start with Danielle Van Dam. So this is a case of a little girl who was abducted from her bed in the middle of the night, disappeared, and no evidence. No, like, where did she go? Was there, you have a mom and dad that are home. There's no like crazy ex that would come and steal her and take her to Mexico. Like, this is just family. And they really didn't have any leads. So they're canvassing the neighborhood. And this was so fascinating. It was debriefed at the FBI Violent Crime Symposium, which I used to take 5 days of vacation time every year to be able to go to this stupid thing. But essentially, these detectives are canvassing the neighborhood, and they see like the most perfect lawn, really clean house with a really well manicured lawn with an RV out front. And they said, I need to talk to that person. It's a single man that lives by himself. And after they left that interaction, they said, that's him. Because perfectly manicured lawn with the hose left out on the lawn, which burns a little pattern. My hose is out right now. I've been dragging it all over the place because I'm trying to grow things. Mm-hmm. And so I know you leave it for a couple of days and now there's like a little snake in the grass. And so what is that? Why is he doing something different than he's done before? There was a mobile home, smelled a little bit like bleach on that sidewalk. And so they were like, who's this guy? So although the hose is totally circumstantial evidence, it's one of those things that causes those spidey senses to dig deeper. And as a cop, there are calls, or I'll say, as you're driving around and you see cars, there are cars that stand out to you as being potentially involved in criminal activity, and then everybody else. And so, like, what are some of the things that aren't criminal but make you look at a car twice?
Well, the area that I work in, we're somewhat close to an airport. So we do get a lot of rental cars. So there's a little bit of a fine line of, are we rental because we're here as a tourist, or are we rental cars because we need to keep changing our rides because we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing? Mm-hmm. So for us, a lot of the cars that we kind of hink onto are out of state plates. Another new big one that we've kind of had that is really, I think, as times change, people and criminals evolve. For like a little while there when we were going through all those like vehicle shortages and the chip shortages, you couldn't get a car, you couldn't even get rental cars. So our criminals over here, they started renting like U-Haul trucks, or even like the Home Depot and Lowe's trucks, where, you rent a truck for $20 a day, $30 a day, and all you have to pay for is mileage. This is way better than doing the actual like Hertz rental, So we get a lot of like U-Haul rentals too, that our officers around here will make sure that if they see a U-Haul rolling around at night, we're finding a way to stop that car.
I can't even imagine like a drive-by in a U-Haul. That's just got to be a level of low that wouldn't make your gang seem very fucking cool. But yeah, we called it black and white fever, that people would see the police and then all of a sudden act differently. Like where most people, the light's about to turn green and everybody just goes. Like pedestrians start walking, cars start driving. It's that person that like stays until it's like a stale green. That's like, oh, they got a warrant. Like, no, I'm gonna follow that car. And stupid things like, oh, you have a mud clot like exactly on your license plate and nowhere else on the car. Like, I mean, those things are kind of obvious. But yeah, with the Danielle Van Dam case, it really was about that hose. That hose kind of opened everything up. Now, oh,
Well, I mean, in something as simple as that hose, that really just goes to back to like old school policing where you know your area, you know your beats, you know what stores are open or not open. That's just old school policing of I stopped a guy that ended up he had a bunch of drugs on him and he must have saw my car and then tried to make an immediate turn so he could like, dip away. And he pulled into a shopping complex. Well, I knew from having, worked and knowing my area, like none of those stores were going to be opening anytime soon. So you have no reason to be going into this parking lot. What are you doing? So, I wait for him to come back out. We see a traffic violation, stop the car. And I'm like, why'd you go in there? He's like, I was just trying to get away from you. And I'm like, well, that's what made it even more noticeable to me is you trying to get
yeah,
away to a closed place. Like, but I mean, it's little things like that I think, just the normal human element of like trying to think like a bad guy. And I think most people in the world that have not been in law enforcement and or are not criminals don't think like that.
mm-hmm.
So, it's a fine-tuned skill that we develop.
Yeah. I remember I had a similar issue. I was on loan to another division, and we weren't assigned radio calls because we didn't really know the area yet. And so like the map is like, I mean, for the city of Los Angeles, it's like hundreds of square miles, and you're like
I can only imagine.
fucked all the time. And so we were assigned to another area. We were just assigned like, hey, go find us some crime. Like, okay, let's go find some crime. Like that's like you just like let me go and let me go find some crime. It's great. And so we were driving by an empty parking lot, and there was a guy walking through the parking lot, and it was to a CVS, but the CVS is closed. It's like 2:30 at night, and I put in my report. His head followed the trajectory of our vehicle, making me feel that he saw the fucking police. He then turned in the opposite direction and began walking with a brand new enthusiasm. That's what I wrote in my report. And so the defense attorney was like, what are you even talking about? I'm like, well, he did an about face and he started walking pretty freaking quick. Like, oh, because he saw you? Like, I'm not saying he saw me. I'm just saying that his head followed the trajectory of our vehicle as we passed him, and then he decided he was going the other way. Anyway, he had a bunch of other people shit on him, and we arrested him for burglary tools, and he had like all this like jewelry, and like he had a little mini Bible and another I think it was in German or something, like, oh, you speak German? He's like, yeah, of course. Like, okay, well, tell me something. Like, oh, and then the whole thing was just a sham. And he was breaking into people's cars and stuff. And we couldn't find any victims. So we just ended up arresting him for the 466, which is burglary tools, which is just sort of a blanket. Like, you've got the tools to commit burglaries. You got a bunch of stuff. We don't know where these necklaces go. He said he found them in the trash that people just throw away their fancy shit.
Throwaway jewelry.
Throw
Yeah.
away their Bible. They're like, forget that. But so with the Danielle Van Tam case, just to tell you what the MO was on this, the parents were swingers. And this lone dude down the street wanted to get in on the action. But the parents said, it's like that old joke. What's the difference between a slut and a bitch? A slut will fuck anyone. A bitch will fuck anyone but you. So this couple says, we're all about that dirty shit, but you don't have another one for us. You're a solo and we don't do those. So he was jilted. He felt pissed because you guys are doing the whole neighborhood. How come I can't get in on it? And so he decided to steal the little girl and rape and kill her. And so they didn't find her body for quite a while. He did take her in the RV. He went to some kind of a like RV park with her. There was a witness that saw him with a little girl. Now, the DNA evidence really did, the forensic evidence in this case really did solidify it, because there were blood drops. He had taken a jacket to the dry cleaner, and the police got that before they processed it. And there was Danielle's blood on that jacket that he had taken. Now, this is a guy, this is where it gets real tricky with DNA, because if this is the babysitter and there's DNA on the jacket, it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm teaching her how to ride her bike. She scrapes herself all the time. I love her, but she's so clumsy. And of course her blood's on my jacket. Like, you're not going to get a filing. The fact that this man supposedly had never been in the house and Danielle had never been in his house is just like perfect in terms of prosecution, because there's no way for you to explain how that little girl's blood is on your fucking jacket. There was also her blood in his motorhome, carpet fibers from her bedroom in his motorhome and in his home. Her hair was in his home and in the RV. Now, this was one of the first cases where they did dog DNA. And what they found is that dogs don't have like super unique DNA as far as they know now, but they sort of have like types, more like blood types. But they found DNA, dog DNA, that was consistent with her. I think she had a greyhound or something in his house, in his dryer lint trap, and in the motorhome, and on a blanket. And then fibers from his home and his RV on the dead body. Now, because they didn't find her for a while, and God, I'm so sorry to have to say some really gruesome things for the audience. I'm sure Margie can take it, but her body was in such a state where they didn't know if anything had happened to her besides the kidnapping and some unknown manner of death. Animals eat carrion, we'll just say. And so they weren't able to file that part of it, except they did get her fingerprints and palm prints on the headboard of his bed, but they were upside down. And wow, that circumstantially
that's
is haunting.
Pretty strong DNA right there.
It's haunting. So they had the palm print, which is great because touch DNA doesn't mean you were there. So that screwdriver, I mean, I don't know if you work a shitty area, but I know in LA, when you're running from the police, you throw your gun up on the roof and you keep running, or you throw it in a bush or whatever. It doesn't mean you were ever on that roof. And so this is part of the tricky part of getting a case filed, because, like, let's just look at the stupid screwdriver on the roof, Tyler Robinson. It doesn't mean that he was on the roof. If
so, and actually a little more has actually come out. I don't know if you've watched, I don't know if it was Candace or Baron Coleman covered it. And the initial audio dispatch tapes and recordings, I believe it was the recordings, they actually put the screwdriver at the scene where the gun was recovered. That actually happened and was it was news reports. News reports came out within like the first couple days that the screwdriver was located at the same location as the gun. And then they
not on the roof.
If you not on the roof, correct. And if you kind of believe what the conspiracy theorists would tell you, is I think that, you know, the prosecution or somebody realized that, oh crap, we have to find a way to put Tyler up on that roof. We don't really have anything putting him up there. So yeah, if you look, I believe it was Baron Coleman that covered it. He actually does a whole breakdown showing news reports, multiple news reports that the screwdriver was located at the scene of the firearm.
Well, I'm going to be very interested in watching that, because even if you let's say you put the gun and the screwdriver in the same bag and then you go to test them, like, your test is fucked. In law enforcement terms, we call that fruit of the poisonous tree, And so you're not going to be able to use it. Was the peanut butter on the chocolate and the peanut butter? We don't know now. And so now it's inadmissible. And we'll get through OJ and how that case ended up completely unraveling, even though, as we all know, he actually did do it. But all the evidence in the world didn't lead to a conviction. In this David Westerfield, Danielle Van Dam case, he was convicted. But it was a big case of this low cards exchange principle where any contact results in the transfer of material. So, and that's why, like, with the gang unit that I worked, if you suspected somebody of a shooting, there is no way I'm going to detain you in the back seat of my car, because now your defense attorney is going to say, well, of course he has gunshot residue on the back of his car or on his hands, because you just put him in the back of the police car. You touch, ammunition and gun oil and this and that, and you put people in the car, and you've arrested other people that have probably shot guns. And so you're going to get all that evidence, like, just taken away from you. Bag those hands before you put people in handcuffs, and it sucks, because especially you want to control those hands, and you want to make sure that you're safe. So there's processing the scene to get a conviction and processing the scene so you can go the fuck home tonight. So you obviously have to balance it. But so Pammy said, I swear I saw a pic where they showed both the pew-pew and the screwdriver on the same photo early on. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. But obviously, there was the missing Axon video from the officer who said that he recovered the screwdriver on the roof. So now, if he didn't recover a screwdriver on the roof and he lied, do they call it a Brady letter in Michigan?
Yeah, Brady.
So if you get a Brady letter as a police officer, like, you're essentially a liar and you're never going to be able to testify ever again. And so obviously, like, if you can't testify on any of your cases, then you're worthless to your department and you're going to be fired. So, yeah.
I feel like in Michigan, now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like we call it something different than Brady, but I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, basically you're put on a list. If you're caught in a lie as a police officer, you are put on a list, and basically you can't testify anymore. So it makes it very difficult for you to be able to do your job and the prosecution to be able to do their job when you have an officer who's been caught lying. And yeah, I'm drawing a blank on what that term is over here in Michigan now, but yeah, we have the same kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I think a lot of us we work for the defense attorneys, because these people that you are paying for the prosecution, you're paying for the officer, you're paying for the judge, you're paying for the bailiff, you're paying for the court clerk, you're paying for the defense attorney. Like, you are paying for all of this crime. Like, you are subsidizing crime with your tax money at all times. And so I guess this would be a good time to go through the OJ trial. I lived in the city of Los Angeles at the time of this, like mid 90s. And there was stuff that couldn't come into the trial because it could be seen as, spearing him. But my lieutenant, Day, was a private security guard for that area of Brentwood a billion years before he came on the job to LAPD. And he had responded to their house one time when OJ had completely smashed out all the windows of her car with a baseball bat and broken off the mirrors and all that stuff. But at the time, the domestic violence laws in California were a lot different. And it was just considered communal property. Like, okay, well, you broke your own thing too. It's not a crime. And, make him a sandwich. I don't know what to tell you. Like, so it's gotten a lot different now. And I think that's a good thing, although it has been really abused by the Me Too movement. We won't get into that tonight. But essentially, there was a long-standing violent interactions going on at this house. They ended up getting divorced, and he moved like a block and a half away, like super close. She was on Bundy, and I want to say he was on like Gretna Green or something, like right around the corner. And so there were things that were kicked out of this trial, and one of them was that as they were talking to him, and you know the difference between Miranda and Behealer, it's a three-prong when I have to Mirandize you. If you're walking down the street and I'm in uniform and you go, I murdered Professor Plum in the library with the candlestick, like, you are not in custody and you're not being interrogated. So that is admissible. If you are at Target and you get arrested for shoplifting and you tell the security guard, I stole it and I stole the other thing last week, that is admissible because you're not in custody with the police. That's private security, totally different. But if you are under arrest, detained, not free to leave, with the police, the real police, and they are asking you questions or making statements to elicit some kind of statement. So if I see you and let's say you're in handcuffs, like on the bench, like getting ready to get booked for something else, maybe you're drunk in public, whatever you're doing, and I have a case of, a stolen car that's totally unrelated, and I come up to you and go, Margie, like, what are you doing here, kind of a thing. And you're like, I know I shouldn't have driven drunk, but blah, blah, blah. It's not admissible because I was making some kind of statement or a sound that could be deemed as me trying to elicit something that would be some kind of confession from you. So I say that to say, when they arrested OJ, and this is LAPD West LA, but I worked many years later, they did not Mirandize him. Now, the interrogation was more like fangirls just being like, oh my God, I mean, like, you're like the real OJ. I'm sure you didn't do this, but anyway, we just had to talk to you, but like, wow. And so they really like it. That was one of the first failures in this case, was that they didn't hit him hard. They had so much evidence. Their blood, Ron Goldman and Nicole Simpson's blood, was in his Bronco. They had fibers from a Bronco carpet of his make and model and year on them. Next to Ron Goldman was a hat with hair consistent with O.J. Simpson's. There was their blood at his house. Now, maybe you could say, well, they were still married and they still had, a relationship, and she was a block and a half away. Maybe she came over for iced tea one time and cut herself shaving or whatever. Fine. But like, he had never met Ron Goldman. So there's no reason for that blood to have been in OJ's house. There were cotton fibers on them that were dark blue. He had just been to an event earlier in the evening where it was on video, where he's wearing this dark blue shirt. And as they interviewed Kato Kaelin, which is so funny because you're not from LA and you have no fucking idea who Kato Kaelin was. He was some kind of like wannabe actor. He was sort of a couch surfer, bum kind of a guy who was living in this like back pool house of O.J. Simpson, because O.J. Simpson was like God. I mean, he had so much money. He was such a superstar. And so he just like let this guy essentially couch surf in the backyard, and he didn't really have a job, and he was going to be like an actor someday. And but Kato Kaelin did testify. Yeah, he came home. He was wearing this like navy blue cotton shirt, like the fibers. So, so they had that. They did try to fight a warrantless search. The Fourth Amendment has certain provisions where you don't have to get a search warrant for certain things. Now, in this case, they found blood outside the door, so they don't have to go get a warrant. There's potentially another victim on the other side of that door. We're fucking going in. So they went in. That held up. The court was fine with that. They wanted to, of course, about the glove. That they asked him with a plastic, latex, whatever glove on, to then put his hand in through a leather glove. The glove had blood on it of both victims. It was found at the scene. The matching glove of the opposite hand was found at OJ's house, but they said that he had trouble trying to put it on. The glove was too small for his large hand. These are leather gloves. I can tell you, being a firefighter, that when you have your gloves and you're all soaking wet because you've been blowing all kinds of water, and then you go and you dry your gloves in your locker, the next time you go to put them on, they're really tight. Like, they do have some shrinkage. And these are meant to be wet, and who knows what kind of gloves these were. There were bloody, and that's where the whole, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit, Like if the glove doesn't fit him, then obviously he's not your guy. And idiots that have never had wet leather before were like, oh, it makes sense, you know. They had bloody shoe prints at the scene that were a very rare high-end luxury shoe brand that he had in the same size as the bloody shoe prints. And so talking about forensic evidence, like if you had a shoe print there, but it's like, oh yeah, I told her I would get her mail, you know, the day before. So of course I was there. That's different than your foot walked through blood, which means after the blood had been spilled. And so this is what I'm talking about when it comes to forensic evidence. Is like there are times when forensic evidence is not giving you a timeline, but a shoe print in blood gives you that timeline. You were there after the blood or while the blood was still in liquid form. So then you say, I haven't seen her for weeks. Well, I can prove that you were, because there's your shoe and the shoe we recovered at your house, this, that, and the other. And then Mark Furman was one of the detectives on the case, or an officer on the case. And I guess at some point in his life, he had said some really disgusting racist shit. And so they brought all of that up. Now, I can't bring up that my rape suspect has 37 other rapes on his rap sheet, because that would be inflammatory and make the jury feel a certain way. But you can bring up that he said something racist about a totally different case, whatever. He is racist, he was racist, he said some stupid crude joke, however it transpired, that was obviously brought into court to make the jury be like, what a bad man. But even if he is a bad man, that doesn't mean that he's not the murderer. So just really interesting watching this defense strategy win, essentially, because there was so much forensic evidence that connected him, that put the chocolate in the peanut butter and the peanut butter on the chocolate. And yet he was still acquitted. And we all know he did it. But this is what I mean to say about juries, that, I mean, you could present facts, you can lead a horse to water, but it doesn't mean they're going to drink. And that was a very political case where people felt like, he's a superstar, you can't do this to OJ, let the juice loose, was the whole thing.
Yeah.
That people were saying back then. And whatever, I won't even get into the suspicious chase, but I mean, I think everybody's seen the Bronco case, or the Bronco chase. Now, talking about circumstantial cases with no forensic evidence, but doing something suspicious. There was a case, Cameron Willingham, this is in Texas in the 90s. There was a house fire. He had 3 little girls that lived with him. He made it out of the house. The 3 little girls did not. The jury decided there was no evidence of any accelerants. There was no confession. There was no witness. There was no forensic evidence at all whatsoever that said this is arson and he wanted those little girls to die. They said, well, he was acting pretty suspicious beforehand, and we do feel like his lifestyle would have been better had the little girls not been in his life anymore. Like, he wanted to like do stuff. And so they convicted him to death and he was executed. And later on, they realized like this might not. And this has been a big case in terms of like fire forensics and fire investigations, because we now know a lot more about fire science to say that it doesn't necessarily have to be a pour pattern, and the fire can do this, that, the other, whatever, and it doesn't mean that it's arson. Especially nowadays when people are surrounded by foam, plastic, and all these things that burn a lot faster and a lot hotter, that could make it seem like you wanted the house to go up, or you intentionally didn't call the fire department until it was too late and stuff. But there is somebody that was killed on circumstantial evidence alone. And yet later on they were like, ooh, yeah, whoops. So, but then OJ, totally fine. Just, go out, do whatever. Another case in the 30s was a false confession case. False confessions to me are so fascinating. Maybe I'll do a show on it one day. The vast majority of false confessions are people that are low IQ, autistic, or they've got some sort of mental delay, or the kids are calling it neurodivergent, whatever. But a false confession case that they later solved, but only after they had executed him. So Scott Peterson is another circumstantial case. That one's a real fascinating one with a lot of evidence, but again, a circumstantial case. And so DNA and forensics, although you would love to say that it's like a slam dunk, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a slam dunk. Identical twins are essentially born with identical DNA. If we're identical twins, but then I had chickenpox and you didn't, like these kind of mutations, or you have an autoimmune disease, you get rheumatoid arthritis and I have lupus, but we both have autoimmune. Like there are things that can get us differentiated later in time, but essentially from the starting point, we have identical DNA. Hopefully, and I don't know, I probably should have looked it up. There haven't been cases of identical twins where one is a homicidal maniac and the other one is a church boy. I don't know. And now
I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, it's probably an episode of
Nothing surprises us anymore. I'm sure it's there.
Well, I mean, speaking of surprises us, like what are we going to do now that we're living in this? I want to be careful here because I don't need the Karens to come for me. But when you have people that are trans identifying and you have witnesses saying, you know, it was a 6 foot tall woman that went that away, but your DNA says that was a male, but you have to make a crime alert that says a female. And then everybody in that vicinity is like, well, I mean, I think, you know, my friend Larry has the same dress, but they said it's female, so it must not be Larry. Like, I mean, that gets really tricky. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then like with sexual assault cases, like DNA doesn't equal rape. You cannot tell. Oh, thank you, Ben. Like and subscribe. You cannot tell that DNA is consensual DNA or not consensual DNA. It's just DNA. So then you have to go all the way around the case to prove consent or not consent. And that can get really tricky, especially in this like Tinder generation where you are allowed to send pictures of your butthole to every dude on the internet and go over to his house and make out with him a little bit, but be like, well, that's my line in the sand. I'm going to go now. No, you're not. Sit the fuck down. And then the sexual assault becomes the crime, but everything leading up to it looks like consent. That's a really hard case to get through trial. And I've had cases where you have prostitutes that agree to.
I was just about to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens.
I'll do A, B, and C, but I don't do X, Y, and Z. And then our district attorney in LA called those cases no human involved. And they literally told me, if I can't picture 12 jurors with tears in their eyes, I'm not filing the case. And that's horrifying. But really, as a police officer taking these reports, there are ways to write the report to show the totality of like what this case is when it comes to court. We get used to as cops. I arrived at the location and met with the victim who stated I've been cohabitating with the suspect for 2.5 years during an argument over finances. He punched me 2 times with a closed fist, causing visible injury. We arrested him for 273.5 and booked him in Van Nuys jail facility for blah, blah, blah. And they're already pulling a reject sheet. And it's like, we have a visible injury. This is 273.5. Like, they live together with a visible injury. Like, this is a crime. But it's not what they want to see. You write a report like, we arrived at the location and the victim was crying uncontrollably. She stated, I loved him. I don't know how this happened. And they're already pulling a filing sheet for you and you haven't even gotten to the crime yet. But you're like painting this picture of like, shit, this case is going to look good. Because unfortunately, these district attorneys are graded on their conviction rate. If they can take a fucking robbery and knock it down to a grand theft person, they still get credit for a felony. And now they don't have to go to trial. They can go to their desk full of other fucking cases. And if they can say, you know, whatever, I'm not going to file this one because they live together, maybe she likes it, whatever. Like, all of these things you have to take off the playing table if you want these cases to be filed. Now, I'm not saying that you should ever make anything up, for sure. And I've worked domestic violence. There were plenty of women that were liars, and this is like even prior to the whole Me Too thing, where it would be the beginning of the month and the baby daddy got his welfare check and she wanted to spend it all month. And how easy is it to just put him in jail for the month? Well, she makes up some charges on him and puts some lipstick on her eye and comes down to the station going, oh, I couldn't believe I got away. Like, okay, but you like were able to get your purse and your phone and your charger and like all this stuff, and you're here with lipstick on your eye. And I would file cases on them for falsifying a police report, which I got talked to because you should just let people lie about making police reports, I guess, which I wasn't really a fan of. But so it can be really freaking complicated to get these cases to prelim. But your best chance ever to, and that's what I was really upset about the Tyler Robinson case, because they brought a real soup sandwich to this prelim. There wasn't that sexy, boom, we got you dead to rights, dude. You better plead to this. This is an executable case.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think typically with preliminary hearings, I mean, the prosecution's whole job is like, let me throw everything I got, that there's really not much doubt. And you're like, okay, well, shit, yeah, let me see what I can do then. Let me work out some deal because, yeah, I'm pretty dead to water here.
And
like you said, that just did not happen.
Yeah. How many prelims have you been a part of that have lasted 3.5 days, 4 days?
I mean, I think maybe just more at like a local city level, we don't really get that heavy involved in it. Like, yeah. To me, that sounds probably more of like a more high profile type crime. But I mean, it's not out of the realm. I mean, there's definitely situations where if you have a lot of witnesses, you have a lot of different types of testimony. I mean, these preliminaries can be stretched out based on, how many people have to testify.
Yeah, it seems like this one was really stretched out with them sort of like bickering at each other. What was going to be let in? What do we allow doctored video? And the answer to that should be no. And you should know fucking better than to have any doctored video, whether you're cropping it or putting a circle around it. It's doctored. You cannot do it. You've got to present the raw footage. And for me,
that was very surprising to me that they brought altered video. That's pretty crazy.
And for me, I would give, because of course you're making like stacks and reams of fucking paper and all these DVDs and flash drives and all this stuff. And you've got to make 3 copies for the court, for the prosecutor, and for your defense. And they've got to be identical. But what I would do while I was watching the video is I would say on channel this, timestamp this, you see a black Toyota Corolla pull up southbound, whatever, park at the thing at this timestamp. And then I would do a screenshot of that and just attach it to my case so you could go through the screenshots. And that really helped me with filing, because now that my prosecuting or the filing attorney doesn't have to look through all this video to watch like an hour-long video to watch one stupid car drive by, I can just show, and the rims look like this, which is consistent when I went to the house on search warrant number, blah, blah, blah. And I served this warrant, and here's the photo of the vehicle that we impounded. And so you can paint that picture in screenshots as long as you're saying, here's the evidence, but like, just to be easier, these are just absolute.
Yeah, let me make this a little quicker for you.
Right. Yeah. And so
that's different than what they portray. That's different than what they gave. So
right. And they're not going to go, but there were times when I had to testify to my screenshots. Yeah, I'm the one who watched the video, and that screenshot represents the video. It's on there. It says channel 13 at timestamp 42 minutes and 16 seconds. And I did that screenshot from that video, and the video is on your disc, because they would be like, oh, okay, so this is like, we're based off this like fuzzy thing. Like, no, we're based off all the video that I fucking handed you that you haven't watched. Like, so, but yeah, like what you're saying is, if you don't go to prelim with a slam dunk case, then you're going to go to trial. And like, you owe your poor victim or your victim's family, in this case, like, it's very hard to sit there and watch somebody smirking or getting, kissy faces from their whoever, baby mama from the background or whatever. And to save your victim, I mean, God, that woman that was the victim of that hot prowl burglary, like, I owe it to her to not have to sit on the stand shaking and pointing like, that's her, and like not being able to like even look at her and being terrified and all over again. Or domestic violence cases. I remember one time I was testifying, call came out, domestic violence. She had locked herself in the bathroom. He had a knife. He was trying to get in. He was trying to jimmy the door with the knife. Help me, help me. We all fly over there, big apartment complex in a fancy high rise. And as we get to the door, they both open the door. They're both behind the apartment door. She comes out. Her thumb is almost cut off. She goes down the hallway one direction. Suspect gets taken into custody the other direction. He gets, obviously we're booking him. He gets taken away so we can talk to her. And essentially, long story short, is they were in an argument over her lending him. She was the most gorgeous girl you've ever seen in your life, going to doctor school, whatever that's called. Clearly I haven't been. She lent him $65,000, I believe, so that he could buy marijuana with it. And so he could sell marijuana. And this wasn't her fantasy boyfriend, but she loved him and she was going her route to become a doctor someday, and she probably is now. And he was a total shitbag. So she said, yeah, I mean, the conversation we've been kind of arguing. I'm really afraid though, because he has threatened to kill himself multiple times. He threw himself out of the car one time when we were driving. He says, if I leave him, he's going to kill himself. I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid. And so, yeah, he did try to he jimmied the door with the knife. And when the door opened, I thought he was going to stab me. So I tried to reach out and stop the knife, and I grabbed it. And that's what almost cut her thumb off. And so we're going to court on this. Now, the whole argument was over the money. We did recover 17.5 pounds of marijuana in vacuum sealed bags during our investigation at this apartment. We get to the preliminary hearing and then to trial. And the prosecutor says, don't mention anything about the marijuana. We're just going to let him have that part of it. We're not going to file any charges. It's 17.5 fucking pounds in a duffel bag, a huge hockey duffel bag. But we're not going to say anything about it because we're just going after the domestic violence part of it. Yeah, but that was what the whole, it's hard to explain a fight that comes to that level without explaining that she lent him $65,000 and he told her to fuck herself, that he was never going to pay her back. And she's like, but that's my tuition money. Like, how am I going to go to doctor school? If I don't have the tuition money, like you said, you were going to sell the marijuana and pay me back, but instead you're like incrementally smoking it and giving it to your friends. And like, where's my fucking money? So anyway, I'm told, hey, don't. So the defense attorney gets real stupid with me, and he says he's trying to establish the fact that the 911 call said that she had sequestered herself inside the bathroom for safety and that he was trying to break in with the knife. And isn't it true that when you got to the door of the apartment that she wasn't safeguarded in a bathroom, that the two of them were together? This is his point, but this isn't how he asked it. He said, isn't it true when you arrived at the location, they were both behind the door? Now, I know what he means, but there was a door So the bathroom was in two pieces. You open one door to get to the sink area. You open a secondary door for toilet and shower. The door to the sink area had what appeared to be dried blood spatter and stab marks in that door. And as we were doing this investigation, she said that was from another time. Like, what the hell is going on in this apartment that you have blood splatter and stab marks in the fucking door? So
how often does he try this?
This is, I mean, this girl, I just hope, like, if that girl, like, gonna be a doctor, the most gorgeous girl you've ever seen, has no self-esteem, like, the rest of us are doomed. Like, I don't know how we're supposed to walk the face of the earth with our head held high when, like, we are not that. And she was that, and she's with that. So, but the defense attorney said, isn't it true that when you arrived at the location that they were both behind the door? And I said, was that the door with the stab marks and the blood spatter, or the door where we recovered the 17.5 pounds of marijuana? Now, my jury is like, oh, and objection! Like, he's freaked out that I brought any of that up because I am tainting the jury. I am painting the picture of what actually was going on in that apartment. I know you want to say that they were playing kumbaya when the door opened, but he jimmied the door with his fucking knife and then cut her thumb when she tried to safeguard it from stabbing her. And so it's really gross that defense attorneys exist for guilty people. I totally understand if you have one person that gets convicted in error, we all have to have rights. And I totally agree that everybody needs to be innocent until proven guilty. But I think as trying to be like a superhero, like, it just kills your heart to know that somebody that is so bad is going to like slide off. Like, we don't even have to talk about the $65,000 I stole from her and the weed I bought from it. Like, don't even talk about the blood spatter and the old stab marks. That's old news. That's not what happened that day. She cut herself. She grabbed my knife. I don't know why she would do that. I was just talking with it in my hand. And so they tried to suppress the 17.5 pounds of marijuana because they shared an apartment, but he had an office where he told her, you're not allowed in this office. So then she doesn't have standing. She can't go into that office. But he said, when I get out, I'm going to kill myself. And when he gets out, that's where he lives. And there were knives everywhere. There were knives in the bedroom door, or the bedroom next to the nightstand. There were knives in the cabinet from the bathroom. He just like put knives everywhere to like keep her scared. And so of course you have to look anywhere where a knife can be, because we're going to put him on a mental hold. And we are going to safeguard any weapons for his fucking safety. And that's when I found 17.5 pounds of marijuana. Now, if I found it in a place that was smaller than where a knife could hide, then maybe you might have some standing. But I'm allowed to look in a fucking giant hockey duffel bag for knives, and there weren't any in there. But we found narcotics and we booked them into custody. So at any rate, this girl is just bawling on the stand. She can't even answer anything. And he is just mad dogging her. And his brother is sitting on his shoulder behind him and mad dogging her too. Like, holy shit. First of all, if you're going to court over this, the jury can see you idiots too, and they're going to feel a certain way about you. This girl can't even breathe. Now, me as the investigating officer, I am allowed to be present during the preliminary hearing, even though I will testify or not testify. And I'm allowed to be there with her as a victim's advocate. And I'm literally just like handing her a box of tissues, trying to just keep her talking, so that we can like continue on with the prelim. I've got my hand on her shoulder. I have to soothe her a couple of times. This is driving the defense absolutely out of their mind, saying, will the detective stop massaging the witness? Like, first of all, she's the victim, you fucking dick. And like, I wouldn't have to massage the victim if your dudes would just stop staring at her. Like, they were going to kill her the moment they got out of court today. So at any rate, it's tricky. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that causes a case to go one way versus the other way. Rose Art, I see that comment. Molly could totally play Erica in the TV docudrama series. Stop. That's it. Stop. I will do that. Why not? And
That was
so,
good.
you know, like juries, they want to say that it's like a jury of your peers, but these people are just too dumb to get out of it sometimes. And like I served on a civil jury. I couldn't believe what I saw. It was long before I became a cop. And first of all, I wore a shirt that said "fuck you, fuck" on it, which I thought was like would get me out of it, but it didn't. And there was one lady who had this like big scarf on, and she had it like over her like a vampire. She's coughing and coughing and coughing, and the judge just says, "Is this spectacle gonna fucking continue?" And she's like, "Yes." And he's like, "You're excused." And she goes, "Thank you," and just leaves. And that was it. And it was just like, fuck, why don't I guess we all need to start coughing.
She figured out that game. That worked out.
Dude, it did work out for her. And like you're not paid anything to go on this jury trial. So I served, I think it was like maybe 8 days or something. And it was a fire that occurred on Catalina Island, which is off of the coast of California. And essentially, it's the most boring case. You have power poles with H frames. They've got these eye bolts that send the power poles, the lines through them. They get rained on, they get windy, a lot of, side load and metal fatigue and all this mumbo jumbo. And the line snapped. It caused a fire. The fire department showed up. The fire department put it out. And that was it. And the state of California wanted to get money from the electric company to cover the expenses of this fire. So the case seems pretty straightforward, except that this jury was they were paying more attention to the two different attorneys. Now, the attorney for the state of California, he was a big man with a big voice and a big mustache, and he had a big booming voice, and he would just bang his hand on the table and be like, "Oh, come on." And so he seemed kind of like a bully. Where the guy that they hired from the electric company was a tiny guy with a small voice, and he had like curly little cherubic hair, and he was young. And he said, the very first day, "This is my first case, and I hope that you can give me, a fair shake. I'm going to try really hard. And, if there's anything that I'm doing wrong, please let me know." And the whole jury was just like, "Oh, poor little guy. Like, shut up. This is all a fucking show. He's totally faking it. What the fuck?" And so he wants to show this like broken piece of this H frame. And he goes and he gets the broken piece, and he wants to walk it in front of the jury. Allegedly, the man cuts himself. I fucking kid you not, Margie. For whatever reason that day, the man brought a beach towel to court that day. And do you know what it took to wrap up his poor whittled little thumb? He wrapped a whole fucking beach towel around his hand and said, "I really want the jury to be able to see this evidence." Like, we get that there was a fire, but like seeing the piece of metal, like nobody fucking cares. We all want to go back to work. Like, just fuck off. So he said, "Well, can the jury just walk by it? But please," as his whole hand is like wrapped in this cocoon, "but don't touch it. It's very sharp." And like people are buying this. This jury was just like, "Oh my God, he really cut himself. This is all a sham. Like, you guys are fucking idiots." So the first like 2 days of testimony were these like big strapping firefighters, and like, "Now tell me what happened when you heard the call for service." "Well, I was in the fire station making an omelet for 35 people when all of a sudden the tones dropped, and I decided," like all this shit, right? And so then I went and I put the fire out, and eventually it just got so dumb that the big booming man was like, "Can we just stipulate that there was a fire and the firemen pulled it out? We don't need the whole calendar to show up to court to tell us that they put the fucking fire out. There was a fire. The fire department put it out. Let's move on." But as it came to deciding what was going to happen, and this is just a civil case, everybody in the deliberation room, they were only talking about he was really mean to the other one, and he told him like to be quiet. And when he objected, he was very loud, and he's really trying his best. And it's just like, what is even going on? There's like evidence in this case, and they just weren't paying any attention to it. And so what Southern California Edison, which was the energy company, said that, well, by law, we have to make these things for a safety factor of 8. We made them for a safety factor of 80. So the fact that it failed, like, that's not our fault. We made them like way beyond what the law requires. And so we shouldn't have to pay for any part of this fire. And the other side is basically saying like, well, your shit caused fire. So, which I understand. It's like, if your dog can get over an 8-foot fence, but you build an 80-foot fence and your fucking dog still comes over and bites me, you still have to pay for it. You made it to a safety factor of 80 to limit your own liability, but you're still liable because the dog still got over. So Southern California Edison is trying to scare us by saying that essentially they would have to build a whole separate grid and shut off the power to one grid to inspect the other grid. And now your electric bills are going to go up astronomically because this is going to be a lot more money for the end consumer. And then people are like, oh, I don't know that I really want to pay like more bill. And so they sided with the little cherubic guy, and didn't make any sense. Civil court in California doesn't require a majority. Nobody would listen to me. I'm like, okay, so you put on your brake and your emergency brake and this, that, and the other, but there's an earthquake and now the street's going like this and your car still rolls into my house. Like, you still have to pay for it. Like, but nobody was understanding. They were just like, but the little guy and like his little curls, and it was just so dumb. So I tell you that story to say, like, juries can really make or break cases, and there's something that you really can't account for. In a lot of cases, they try to game it by figuring out who the jury is. In that case, they were asking us, have you ever had a fire? And one guy said, yes, I had a house fire when I was very little, and I didn't like it very much because I felt that the firemen could have done a better job to save, all of my toys. And they were like, all right, you can go. Like, thank you. It was just like, fuck. But, with court cases, it would be great if it was just fact-based, but there's so much emotion to it and so much manipulation to it. And it sucks. It sucks because you're not really basing it off of what happened. And
yeah, I think, excuse me. I think when it comes to the Tyler Robinson case, I think one of the things that, like, there was definitely a little bit of gameplay, like somebody had mentioned about like the courtroom gameplay, and it's, I didn't see too much of that, but there was, little bits here with all the objections. The one thing that I really kind of like struck me as like, come on, we got to be better than this, mainly just from a law enforcement professional standpoint, is those lies by omission by the officers. God, they just, listen, I know that we always want to make it look like this is our guy, but as you said, we're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
You don't have to try to sway your statement to try to make it look like it's this guy. Just let the facts speak for themselves.
Right.
So I think, like the Miss Noble Ring doorbell camera, where the challenger pulls up and they're trying to claim it's Tyler who's acting by himself, but
that's the worst one, I think.
The homeowner said that it's a bald guy driving with 3 other occupants. So, I mean, by not adding that into your statement, maybe you weren't asked that question just quite directly enough, but it doesn't give a good look for the prosecution side.
Right. But that's why it's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And to say Tyler Robinson's car passed when you know damn well it's a bald guy driving it, I don't know how in good consciousness you can even say that, unless you then say, and here's the bald guy pictured with him at the Dairy Queen or whatever. Like, put your case together. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is that a prelim has a very like base level that you don't have to present a lot. Hearsay is totally allowed, that you don't have to really slam dunk it. And it's not a good look. Obviously you want them to plead to whatever charge you can at that prelim. So to do a sloppy job sucks too. But the evidence that they can present at a prelim can be a lot fucking sloppier, and they're going to be a lot less scrutinized than at a trial. Like if he had priors. From this case, it really is interesting. One, that Lance Twiggs has this federal immunity. He had a friend in the furry community that had committed a mass shooting 2 weeks earlier at the Catholic school. He had a friend in his furry community that was arrested at the UVU campus trying to break into the crime scene the next day. There's the Wesley video that could potentially be him that's being interviewed at the crime scene. So that's a lot of good stuff. And unfortunately, like, I hate this, but we're in like a forensic files sort of like world. So everybody thinks that they could solve the case. But people ask a lot of questions, and we're also in a time period right now where people aren't really trusting authority very much right now. And so you do have people that are naturally skeptical or very loudly skeptical that aren't going to believe the Fed slob because daddy told you it's true. But there are a lot of ways to wiggle out of things. And now that they've seen the crux of the case, now the defense can start building their strategy. I remember I had a case, I think it was a GTA, or we call it a burglary for motor vehicle, car break-in. And I got my gangster off fingerprints that were on the underside. I'll use my old camera here. You have the door handle. They were on the underside of the door handle, right here, fingerprints. The defense's strategy was, my client rides his skateboard in the street, and he must have fallen and braced himself on somebody's car by putting his hand up and under and touching a door handle. That was their whole defense strategy.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, and it kind of did work. I had another one that was a GTA. He was driving with a screwdriver in the ignition. So part of the elements of being able to prosecute for a GTA is the person has to be knowingly driving a stolen car. Like, oh, I borrowed my mom's car.
It's hard to say, like, your car's jimmied.
Right. Yeah, it's jimmied. And so we were like, bro, what's up with the screwdriver? And he's like, oh, I just bought this car, today. And like, you didn't think it was weird that there's a screwdriver in it? Well, I know it seems weird, but it's actually a pretty cheap fix. I got the car for a pretty good deal. The owner said he lost the keys, so he just jimmied it to sell it to me today. And it's like, unfortunately, although that doesn't pass like the sniff test for most people, that is a defense strategy that can help take a case completely off the docket if it's believable enough, although it's crazy. But also with this forensic files timeline, people are really expecting for every freaking case for there to be DNA and fingerprints and all this stuff for every stupid case. And that's just not reality. I saw one about the Tyler Robinson case where they got a palm print and fingerprints off of the window where he jumps off the roof and runs. And I don't know that anybody has shown him climbing up on the roof. So we don't know if he got up there the same way. In fact, I think they thought he went up some other stairwell, but he jumps off this one area. They got a palm print and fingerprints. And I was watching some, I don't know, what are you, podcasters, whatever, talking about it, going, aha, and it wasn't Tyler Robinson's fingerprint or palm print. Like, why would you think it was? Like, he jumps off a roof and runs. Like, did you ever see him touch the glass? So I feel like the whole forensic files sort of fallacy is, it kind of gets lost. There's a lot of mommy sleuths that don't really understand, like, a fingerprint.
And even from a cop's perspective, it really makes our job a lot more difficult, because I feel like news media and these different shows have really like fantasized what crime scenes are, what you can get evidence from, or especially like fingerprints. I go to runs, where we have a break-in or something like that, where it's something where typically we might not have somebody come out and tech a whole scene. It's just, like an attempt larceny from auto, where we're trying door handles, right? We may not have gained entry, but we're trying. And I think that like people see what TV shows are and TV dramas, and they just think that that's real life, and it makes it difficult for sure.
Yeah, it's and then the system is so bogged down. Like people don't understand like DNA. I mean, there's like a sweet spot for it. You look at like rape cases, and if you have a prostitute that has 37 kinds of DNA at a particular location, you can't tell which one is this or that or the other. Not to mention, like, I mean, at least in California, there was a whole backlog of these kits, these DNA kits. I think it was like 400,000 at one time that they thought hadn't even been processed. And that crime does carry a statute of limitations. So people's cases were timing out because nobody ran the DNA. Like, there needs to be money for this technology, because that swab kind of could make or break the case. If you have a stranger's DNA in my kit and he says, I never met her, I don't know her, I never had anything to do with her, like, you've got a case. If you say, yeah, I met her on Tinder and here's a picture of her butthole, like, I don't know that you're going to get a filing. But it's tricky, and you get cases with very little DNA, and every time you run that DNA, you are consuming that DNA to never again exist. So if you aren't sure, or you think that the technology is going to get better, and the technology has gotten a lot better, and now we have familial DNA, which I guess I wonder, like, how do you feel about familial DNA and how detectives are able to get off of warrants like 23andMe and Ancestry DNA to compare to crimes?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of wild to me. I have not personally had to experience that or deal with that for any of our cases that we've had to handle, but that was definitely a change in law enforcement that, we definitely didn't anticipate was going to be something favorable, but being able to pull that familial DNA, I could see how that could come in. I also could see how, from a privacy perspective, people sign up to do this genetic testing and they may think, oh, I'm just trying to see what my heritage is, and
Yeah.
not have any idea that, your federal government is actually hanging on to this information that
Yeah.
could be against you. That's kind of crazy.
We should do it. We should do one on flock cameras and familial DNA.
Oh, yeah, flat cameras.
Yeah.
It's such a double-edged sword. I really do love what we were able to do tracking criminals with flock cameras, but I understand also that other edge of the sword where it is definitely an invasion of privacy. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people that are podcasting a lot lately about how bad these flock cameras are. Obviously, the public only gets to see so much of it, but from a street cops perspective, it is a very useful tool. And
Yeah.
it's not just for crimes. We use it a lot to solve, like, for missing persons, or even something to where it doesn't necessarily get to the level of, okay, this person can be entered into our computer system as missing, but, well, I know she went out, like, with her friends last night and she's just not home yet, and things like that. But it is a very useful tool.
Yeah, but then I think the whole problem boils down to, when humanity becomes low trust assholes, any technology can be used nefariously. I mean, you think in terms of like the domestic abuser who's like, that bitch didn't come home last night, I'm going to do a little, missing persons report on her. And the officers would be like, well, her car was spotted in front of this guy's house last night. Like, oh, yeah. Like, I mean, any technology can be used in a nefarious way. I would love to do flock cameras another time. I do have a couple other DNA cases. And maybe we'll get into the familial DNA another time. But we had a case in Los Angeles, this guy, Lonnie Franklin Jr., he was caught off of DNA. And I just want to kind of explain DNA for people. They had DNA. He was raping and killing women and leaving their dead bodies in alleys. They had found many of these bodies. One victim lived. It's a wild story. It's such a wild story. It deserves its own show. But essentially, they knew the DNA of this person, but this person had never been arrested and had their DNA taken because they weren't in the CODIS system. And so there was one guy that they kind of suspected, but he had already been arrested for a felony. And so he should have been in the CODIS database. He was not. And so they were like, well, it can't be this guy that we suspected that's picking up all these prostitutes. So, like, I don't know. What do we do? And then it was like, oh, familial DNA. It's like brand new. So they find somebody. Now, familial DNA will say it's this far removed. So you have a second cousin, a great aunt, but it can only tell you it's this far away. It can't tell you it's your mom's brother's sister or whatever the case is. So they found somebody close, and through that, they started really looking at Lonnie Franklin Jr. And they got two components. The DNA side of it, they follow him to a pizza party. He takes a bite of a pizza slice, puts it on a paper plate. He has a napkin, and he has one of those like red faceted plastic drinking glasses. They run the DNA off the glass and a fork that he used. And they were like, oh, those are going to be the best DNA because he actually put his mouth all over them. Now, the detective that was briefing this case for the class that I was in, he was like an older white guy. And he's like, we didn't know what to do. We were following him. We didn't know he was going to a birthday party. He just walks into this birthday party and it's like, shit. So I just grabbed the busboy's like apron. I grabbed one of those tubs. I put a plastic trash bag in it because I didn't want anybody else's DNA from the tub getting onto my shit. And I went to bust the table and I only bust Lonnie Franklin Jr. And then I walked away. And the whole like party of people made fun of him and was like, bro, you should have stayed in school. You're fucking working here as a busboy, stupid. And he was just like, mm-hmm. And so he leaves with Lonnie Franklin Jr.'s plate, fork, pizza crust, glass, and napkin. The glass and the fork had so many people's DNA on it, they could not get a sample of Lonnie Franklin Jr. identified. Now, these are a fork and a cup that have gone through the washing machine, hopefully, at this restaurant over and over again. And it really made me think about restaurants like a lot differently after that. It's like, oh, I guess I will use a straw. So they ended up getting his identification through the pizza crust and the napkin. Now, they brought 10 dead bodies to court, 10 homicides to court. Although through the court process, they identified 6 more bodies that attributed to him via DNA. And now at this point, they're like, well, I mean, we already have 10. The other 6 we're not even going to prosecute because he's kind of older and fuck it. And this kind of stuff happens. So they only prosecute 10. 6 more for sure are him. 25 match his MO. And as they were serving the search warrant to his garage, he had a pack of Polaroid pictures in an envelope in his refrigerator in his garage, just like all of you have photographs in your refrigerator in your garage of other women in various states of potentially conscious or dead, undressed, and potentially being assaulted. Hundreds of photos. It caused billboards all over the city of Los Angeles. Do you know just these faces? Of course, they can't put pictures of dead women on a billboard. But at any rate, he only got convicted of the 10 cases. But they think, did many, many, many dozens of these cases. And thank God they got him off familial DNA. So although, like a license plate reader or a flock camera or familial DNA, these are things that are just aggregate data that people are walking around giving up, but they can be used to take bad people off the streets. He was also called the Grim Sleeper, and maybe he's a case that we'll go into at length if you guys like some of this crime stuff. We're getting close to the 2 hours, Margie.
Yeah.
But
earlier in the comments, somebody asked a pretty good question that I'd like to just kind of touch on. I think you probably also could provide some insight. Somebody asked, how difficult is it to testify on cases that take months and years? How do you all recount specific important information? So from again, my perspective is just a road cop. I have never been a detective. I don't have to be the officer in charge of handling cases. Just from a road cop's perspective, what we do is when we know that we're going to get subpoenaed for court and we have a preliminary or even for a trial, we will review our reports That's why, as you said earlier, it's so important to paint a good picture in your report, because you don't know how long time will pass before you actually have to go to court on that case. And I've had cases that are substantially old cases, and I look back and I'm like, oh, why did I type this crappy report? Look what I did to myself. But thankfully now we're in an era with body cameras, and Axon is a great program that will actually make the cameras last for 14 hours, not an hour and 40 minutes. But our cameras will pick up pretty much everything we see and do that day on our we can review our body cameras. So whenever I have a case that I know that I'm gonna have to testify for, even something as simple as a traffic ticket, when I know I have to go to court for a traffic ticket, I just don't want to go and have to testify in front of a judge or a magistrate and look like an idiot. So I review everything. Like if I know, if it's just for something as simple as a red light, I'm going to review that. I'm going to look at the body camera footage. I'm going to look at my patrol camera footage and make sure I have all my information and my facts right, because this is what our job is, right? Our job is to catch the bad guys. So you have to be prepared for when you go to testify.
Yeah.
What's your input of how do you prepare, like as a detective?
I wrote very long-winded reports. I got a couple of them here. And, well, not my warrant, but I wrote very long reports, pages and pages and pages and pages. But like this is 7 pages, and it was for commercial burglaries. And I don't know, I've got a bunch of reports, but I am writing the report to take away any defense strategy. And I am writing the report so I can slam dunk that shit when it comes to court. Because they're going to ask you, isn't it true, Officer Kelly, that when you went to the police academy that you were taught to write a clear and thorough report? And isn't it true that my client actually told you that the car belonged to his uncle and you didn't call the uncle at the scene? My client is not guilty. And these are the kind of dumb things, these tactics, because I think what you have to understand is, like, not you, but the audience, is that the vast majority of people that are the defendant did it. And so now you're paying a defense attorney to what? The guy did it. So they're just looking for loopholes, and if it doesn't fit, you must acquit, and like all these things of like, how can we woo-shaw or find some technicality to take away this and that and the other to get my client off? The guy's guilty. So, and he has the balls to stand there and say not guilty, and this whole circus of witnesses and evidence and money and DNA testing and all this stuff just to go, see, I told you he was guilty, when a report should just be able to say he's guilty based off this, that, and the other, and people should go, yeah, he's guilty. But like this whole trial situation, and I understand that like there are times in which people have been wrongly accused, wrongly convicted. So it's an important part of our process, but it does get real tedious sometimes, especially when they're treating you on the stand like you're the fucking problem. And there are times when I've had to testify that it's like you're just so over it. I was testifying in a gang homicide, and long story short, I had identified some Snapchat conversations through a search warrant. You think that shit goes dormant? It doesn't.
No, it does not.
It does not. And so I'm reading all these conversations about the 22 blapper, that they're buying this 22 and they're going to go kill this guy, and which they did. And so then I have to identify who this stupid screen name belongs to, that it is the rival gang and it is this member and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm testifying to how I know that when they're saying this, and that's the thing like with jail calls, when you listen to jail calls and they're like, hi, Mom, remember I told you I really love that one kind of cereal? You know, it would be really good if you put pineapple and pork chops and a wrench with it. Oh, yes, honey, I agree. All right, thank you, bye. And you're like, well, fuck, I have no idea what the hell that means. Like, they talk in code. And the same thing goes for like Snapchat, right? When they talk about a 22 blapper, you have to be the asshole that's sitting on the stand saying like a 22 blapper is a firearm. And so I had identified one of the Snapchat screen names based off of a masturbation video that he sent some girl he met on Tinder, and he's wearing this stupid Batman mask. And then I recovered that same Batman mask on a search warrant of the residence. And so I'm putting these pieces together. And unfortunately, this gang had no idea that Snapchat. And I'm like, well, you could play the video. Like, I got the mask. Like, I booked it into evidence. And like, we can all watch the video if you need. Like, it was just like, we will, move to, we'll accept that he was the identifying whatever. And anyway, his brother went to jail for a long time. And, but it was just, it's interesting the kind of things that they want to exclude from even the jury to know. And I just feel like, how can the jury really make an informed decision if they don't know? Like, if they don't know all the parts of it? You should be, I mean, because the defense is going to say, isn't it true that they said a 7-foot tall purple guy was running this way, but when you showed up, it was a 4-foot tall yellow guy running that way? They're allowed to bring all of that up, but I can't bring up that he was a 7-foot tall purple guy running that way 37 other times, but he's not the guy now. You want to say he's not the guy now, but he's done it 37 times. So it, court, it's a little bit of a game. And unfortunately, the game is a little bit rigged because you're the only one that has to play by the rules, and they're allowed to say whatever they want. But there was an arrest I wanted to talk about when we were talking about touch DNA, because a lot of this screwdriver is based off of touch DNA. So this is kind of important, kids at home. This is only 2012. It's in Silicon Valley. And now this guy was arrested, Lucas Anderson. He's arrested for a 459 hot prowl burglary, which means he went into a home while people were home to burglarize the place or commit another felony crime. He put tape over the couple's mouth and nose on the husband, which killed the husband. Husband could not breathe with the tape over him, and the husband died. The paramedics came and, pronounced him, and the coroner got DNA from underneath the fingernails because he's fighting for his life from these attackers, and they get the DNA of this Lucas Anderson. Lucas Anderson is a local. Cool. He's a known shitbag. He's a big drunk. He's always getting into trouble, in and out of jail. But Lucas Anderson says, I mean, I get like blackout drunk. And to which the defense attorney was like, shh, let them make their fucking case. Like, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what I did. Maybe I did it, but like, I don't usually do that stuff. So like, it could have been me. Like, shut up. Don't be making those statements. And so this DNA that's under the dead guy's fingernails definitely belongs to Lucas Anderson. But what they found, as Lucas Anderson is sitting in jail for 5 months, which I have to tell you is 5 months longer than the guy who intentionally murdered somebody outside the House of Blues in frickin' Chicago, is that he was blackout drunk the night of this murder, and the same paramedic that went to go pronounce the poor dead guy had been on a call helping this drunk guy just beforehand, acquired his DNA of the drunk guy, went and touched the dead guy. They swabbed it and they said, we've got our suspect. And Lucas Anderson had never been to that house, and he had never tied that person up, and he did not kill that person. And he spent 5 months in jail awaiting this DNA snafu because of touch DNA. Touch DNA doesn't necessarily mean that you're the murderer. And I think we have to really look at that screwdriver case, because it's like all the incels on the internet are like, aha, there's a screwdriver with degraded touch DNA. That means he pulled the trigger. Like, no, he could have been at the scene. He could have thrown a screwdriver. He could have lost a screwdriver. People share tools all the time. He could have lent me a wrench from, to fix my sink. And then It touched, it went
Well,
in
and it
his
was
school
also
bag.
it was also Lance's testimony during his deposition that he said that they have like a common area where they maintain and keep all their tools. So that was in specific reference to the Dremel because when he was doing the engraving of the bullets. But he said that they keep the tools somewhere downstairs, like in a common place. So, anybody who comes or goes to that apartment, Lance himself, Tyler, anybody could have had access to those tools. And I'm assuming this was probably just one of those tools in your tool bag.
Yeah, and tools are commonly traded, sold, used, all kinds of stuff. Rose
Yeah.
Thistle Art says, under the fingernails, I don't know, that one sounds sus. Except, Rose Thistle Art, this drunk guy who was so blacked out, he was in the hospital for being too intoxicated at the time of this murder. It absolutely wasn't him. 100% wasn't him. The DNA was there. And so we'll see where this case goes. But if the DNA was there and if it was found on a thing, like there are other explanations. And it's just like, I get sick of these, forensic files types that are like, oh, well, that means that he's guilty and that he killed him. There's still other evidence. You have to get evidence that all these people walking around, whether it was one person in a bunch of different outfits or the same person, whatever, or multiple people. And there's just a lot of holes in this case. And unfortunately, it's going to come to things like those two cars don't match up. And now there's a bald guy driving it, but you say that it's him. And you say that he's got the gun down his pants while he's walking stiff-legged on the right. But then is that him wearing stiff-legged on the left? And what camera do you have that's showing him pull the rifle out in public and put it down the other leg for one single step before he then was stiff-legged on the other side? Where do you show him going up there? Where do you show this like 4K shot of his face and his beady little eye looking down the scope of this rifle and taking the shot? And I mean, there are circumstantial cases that can lead to a conviction, but I'm absolutely appalled at what they have pulled out thus far. And we'll see. I don't know, but you've got bullet trajectory issues. There's other videos showing other theories. And essentially, when you're a detective, I think I've said this a million times, like the only thing I know is that I didn't do it. That's where I'm starting from. And I think we would all be really benefiting from being a little bit more open-minded instead of just like, well, yep, kill the guy. Because this is a death penalty case. And you better be damn sure, because I've just given you just a couple of DNA cases that weren't the guy. And you're going to kill him over a screwdriver that may have been on a roof or it may have been in a bush. And, shit happens. So we'll see. I'll be interested in this to see where that case specifically goes. I know with bullet trajectories, and they didn't present the autopsy at the prelim, but trajectories are very easy information to find out where that round came from. I know there was in the Robert Durst trial, they were able to prove that murder was not self-defense because it came from the back of her head to the front of her head. We had a police officer named Christopher Dorner who went on a shooting spree and was killed by officers. He worked for the Los Angeles Police Department. In fact, he worked with my best friend, Randy, and said, let's sue the department and say that they're racist. And Randy was like, they only don't like you because you're a piece of shit. It has nothing to do with what color you are. Like, do your fucking job. Because it was a soup sandwich. But at any rate, he got into a shooting off duty. He said that he was shooting at an attacking dog. But the entrance wound is smaller than the exit wound. So he didn't know that. But the LAPD that was trying to figure out what happened with this discharge of his weapon said, okay, so wait, what happened? I was pushing the dog away. Yeah, but you shot this way. So the story you've been telling us for 3 days is bullshit. Cut it out. Tell us what really happened. Like, oh, I accidentally shot myself. And shockingly, they kept him on the job, even though he got into a shooting with serious bodily injury and fucking lied about it. And they were like, well, just let him stay, I guess. And then, like, lo and behold, he turned out to be an absolute shit, like, cop and lied and was fired and then went on a shooting spree and murdered his defense attorney's daughter, and it's like a whole fucking thing. But we knew he was a piece of shit like back then. So I don't know. I wish everybody was totally honest and honorable. We didn't require this mountain of freaking evidence on cases and all these loose ends to be wrapped up to prosecute people way back in the day. But now you've got dirty cops and mommy sleuths, and like everything just gets real convoluted. So I don't know. We shall see. I did want to talk about the Tetris murders, but I feel like we got to let these people go to bed. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Pammy.
We can talk for hours. I say we could talk for hours about this. So.
Yes, we can. I would love for you to come back, Margie. So, put that little bee in your bonnet, because I love talking shop with you. I think it's super fun to talk to somebody that I never worked with, but it sounds like you were a really awesome cop, now, and I would have loved to have worked with you when I was still doing that. And if you're hiring, maybe I'll apply in another 20 years or something. But I think I'm just revisiting old cases and my glory days, and my years of hopping walls are over. So
promise you, my years of hopping fences are over too. So
actually, my whole arm, I don't know if you can even see it, I'm like shredded. I'm still a first responder, but we had to go over some wall and do all kinds of crazy shit and bust through a wall and walk through the studs and go through a window and grab a victim and like all this craziness last night. And I'm just shredded and I'm covered in bruises, like, and band-aids and all this. It's like, why do I do this? I'm going to be 52 in 2 weeks, Margie. Why am I doing this to myself? Okay, guys. Love you guys so much. Pammy says she loves the thumbnail. Thank you. We will need other faces of Margie's to abuse through the AI process. We shall see what we will be up to next. So love you guys. We're here every Friday. Well, I'm here every Friday. It'd be nice to see Margie a few times too. At the same time, same bat channel. So I will see you guys next week.